The purple blood pooled beneath Commander Vex like a spreading shadow. And honestly, he had to laugh about the whole thing, not a pleasant laugh, mind you, more like the kind of sound you make when you realize the universe has been playing a joke music on you for 20 cycles, and you only just got the punchline. Young Krell stumbled upon him behind the wreckage of what used to be a dreadnought-class assault vessel. The kid still had that fresh-faced look, all four eyes wide and shimmering with inexperience. Vex would have rolled his own eyes if he had the energy, but most of his important fluids were currently decorating the scorched earth around him. And GT, Commander Krell dropped to his knees, his breathing apparatus wheezing with panic. Commander Vex, I will call for medical extraction. I will get you out of here, I will. And GT, you will shut up and listen. Music. Vex interrupted, his voice box crackling like broken static, because I have maybe 15 minutes before my internal organs finish their little rebellion. And I need to tell you something. Music. Important. Krell's mandibles clicked nervously. The kid was probably fresh out music of the Academy, still believed all that propaganda about superior Krill physiology and inevitable galactic dominance. Music. Poor fool. And GT, sir, please conserve your strength. And GT, strength. Vex actually did laugh. Music this time, and it hurt like someone was juggling razor blades inside his thorax. And GT, music. And GT, kid, I have about as much strength left as a solar panel in a black hole, but what I do have is knowledge, terrible knowledge, that music I need to pass on before I become fertilizer for this miserable little planet. The sound of distant explosions rumbled across the battlefield. Human explosions. Music. Vex noted they had a particular rhythm to them, almost musical. Those crazy primates even made warfare sound like percussion. And GT, this is about the humans. Music, is it not? Krell asked, his voice dropping to something almost reverent. And GT, oh, it is absolutely music about the humans. And GT, Vex coughed, tasting metal and regret. Sit down, Junior. Let me tell you a story about the single music greatest mistake the Galactic Council ever made. Let me tell you about the day we decided that conquering music, Earth, would be easy. Let me tell you before I die who humans really are. Krell settled onto the rubble and Vex began his confession. 20 cycles ago, music. Vex began, his voice steadying as memory took over from pain. The Galactic Council received music, the preliminary survey data on species 7739. That was you humans, just music. Another carbon-based life form on some unremarkable blue marble orbiting an average star. Krell leaned forward, his auditory sensors twitching. The science division practically fell over themselves laughing when they compiled the biological assessment, and I mean that literally. High researcher Thon actually collapsed from his perch because he was chittering so hard. Vex shook his head, which sent fresh waves of agony through his spine. And GT, music. And GT, worth it though. Humans, they told us, were perhaps the most ridiculous species they had ever cataloged, but surely they possessed some defensive capabilities. Krell asked, oh sure, if you consider throwing rocks and making loud noises. Defensive capabilities. Vex's Secondary breathing hole wheezed. Something that might have been a chuckle. Look, kid, you have to understand the context here. We K-Than have exoskeletons that can withstand direct plasma fire, music. The Zelthorians regenerate entire limbs in hours. The Korrix do not even have a concept of death because they are a collective consciousness spread across millions of bodies, and humans music. Humans are squishy meat bags filled with water and hope. Vex coughed again. No natural armor, no venom, no telepathy, no phase-shifting music, no redundant organs. They have one heart, Krell, one. If you poke it wrong, they just die. Their bones break if you look at them funny. And GT, music. And GT, their skin tears like tissue paper. They need a very specific mixture of gases to breathe, a very specific music temperature range to survive, and a very specific pH level in their oceans, or everything falls apart. Then how? Wait. And GT, music. And GT, I am getting there, Vex interrupted. The council reviewed all this data during the occupation committee meeting. I was there. And GT, music. And GT, sitting right next to Ambassador Kix, who kept making these little trilling sounds of amusement. The entire chamber was buzzing with excitement. See, Earth had resources, music we wanted, rare minerals, liquid water, strategic location near the outer arm trade routes, and the inhabitants were basically ambulatory jelly with delusions of grandeur. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of burning metal and something else, something organic. Music. Vex tried not to think about it. Hi. Commander Zorn gave the presentation himself. He had this little pointer device, and he music kept tapping it against the holographic display of a human skeleton. Look at this, he said. No tail for music balance, walks upright on only 2 legs, completely unstable. Brain music is completely exposed in this fragile calcium shell. Gestation period is 9 months. Music for a single offspring, and the offspring cannot even walk for a full cycle. Afterward, evolutionary disaster. He called them absolute bottom tier species. What was the vote? Krell whispered. Unanimous approval for immediate annexation. Vex felt something. Music, wet trickle from his mouth. Estimated timeline for complete subjugation, 3 months. Conservative estimate, 6 months, accounting for transportation, logistics, and the possibility that we might need to do 2 whole music waves of bombardment instead of 1. The champagne equivalent was already being music poured. Zorn was measuring the drapes for his new office in what you humans call New York. Music, and then we actually showed up, Vex said quietly, and those fragile little meat bags taught us a lesson we will never ever forget. The invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace right on schedule. Vex continued, his voice taking on quality. 47 warships, enough firepower to glass a continent. Before breakfast, music we had done this song and dance with 17 other species. Standard procedure. Music really show up, broadcast a surrender ultimatum, watch them panic, accept their inevitable submission. Music install puppet government, move on. Simple. What did the humans do? Krell asked. They laughed at us. Vex said it so flatly, music, that Krell thought he had misheard. They what? Laughed, giggled, chuckled, made jokes. Vex's mandibles, music, clicked in, remembered Disbelief, our translator systems nearly had a meltdown trying to process the responses. We broadcasted our ultimatum. Music in 1,700 languages. Simultaneously, surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. Very dramatic, very official, we expected. Terror, maybe some begging music. Perhaps a hastily arranged planetary government offering us tribute, and instead, their communication networks exploded with what our linguists eventually identified as memes, little pictures with text on them. One showed our flagship with a caption that translated roughly to "Come at me, alien bro." Another depicted High Commander Zorn's face, photoshopped onto some sort of Earth waterfowl with the words, "Peace was never an option." Vex coughed music. And it might have been a laugh. Their global network crashed 3 times from the sheer volume of humans making fun of our Krell's. Confusion was palpable, but surely when you began the actual assault, we absolutely did. Vex's music, eyes dimmed with the memory. Zorn was furious about the mockery. He ordered immediate orbital bombardment of military installations. Textbook opening move, destroy their ability to coordinate, then land ground forces for cleanup. Except here is the thing about humans that nobody mentioned in the survey data. What they do not care about textbooks or logic or self-preservation. When sufficiently annoyed, Vex shifted, wincing music. We targeted their central military command in the northern continent. Vaporized it, gone, nothing but a crater. And you know what happened. What? 17 different backup command centers activated immediately. See, humans have this beautiful, insane tendency to plan for the worst possible scenario and then prepare 3 additional backup plans for scenarios that are even worse and make no sense. They call it redundancy, music. I call it paranoid genius. The distant sounds of battle grew closer. Krell glanced nervously toward the horizon. But Vex continued. But that was not even the strangest part. The strangest part was when we intercepted their military communications. They were not panicking. They were not surrendering. They were angry. Music specifically, they were angry because, and I quote from the actual translation, "You made us spill our coffee, you tentacle." Music jerks. Coffee, some sort of caffeinated beverage they are weirdly protective of. That was when I first encountered the human concept of spite. And GT, music. And GT, Vex's voice dropped. See, most species fight for survival, for territory, for resources, for logical music reasons. Humans fight for spite, pure distilled illogical music spite. They will absolutely choose to make your victory as painful and expensive as possible. Even music, if they know they cannot win just to ruin your day, that cannot be. Our first landing party was 1,200 soldiers. Music, elite shock troops. We deployed outside a human settlement called Denver. The locals were supposed to flee or hide, standard prey species behavior. Instead, they formed defensive positions and opened fire with primitive chemical propellant weapons, bullets. They call them little metal projectiles. That should not even scratch our music. Armor should not. Turns out when you fire enough of them very quickly. And GT, music. And GT, from very close range directly at joints and vulnerable points, they work just fine. Vex grimaced. We lost 200 Music soldiers in the first engagement. Against civilians, actual civilians with music, hunting rifles, and an attitude. Problem, the commanding officer. Transmitted back to music, the fleet. Asking for clarification on the survey. Data, specifically he wanted to know if music, someone had perhaps forgotten to mention that humans were completely insane. What did High Commander say? He said to stop whining and finish the job. Vex closed his eyes. That was his first mistake, but definitely not his last. The thing about humans, Vex said, his music voice growing weaker but more insistent, is that they are horrifyingly good at learning, and I do not mean learning like, oh, I will study this problem for a few cycles and develop strategic response. I mean they see something once and 15 minutes later they have figured out how to kill you with it. Krell shifted uncomfortably on the rubble. Third week of the invasion, we were using standard plasma rifles. Beautiful weapons, elegant, refined. Took our military engineers 400 cycles to perfect. A human soldier, some guy named Jackson Rodriguez, music, got his hands on one when he killed its previous owner with a shovel. Krell, a flat piece of metal on a stick. Vex wheezed. Music anyway. This Rodriguez character had the weapon for maybe 6 hours before he completely disassembled it. And GT, music. And GT figured out how it worked and then reassembled it with modifications that increased the fire rate by 30%. Music, using parts from a broken Earth vehicle and something he called duct tape. That is impossible. I have the field reports. I watched the video footage myself. Music, he did not even have an engineering background. His job before the war was, and I am music reading from his identification card here. Birthday party clown. Vex made a gurgling music sound. A birthday party clown reverse engineered our military technology in less time than it takes me to fill out a music supply requisition form. The irony was not lost on Krell, who remained silent. Then there was Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Special Forces. We cornered her unit in a collapsed building in what music they called Hong Kong. 47 of my soldiers surrounding 12 humans. We had air support, we had artillery, we had every advantage. I was commanding that operation personally, and I remember thinking, finally, music, a clean victory. Vex paused, his breathing labored. She called for a ceasefire. Wanted to negotiate music. Surrender, that is what I thought, so I agreed because the council wanted prisoners for study. She walked out, no weapons visible, hands up, got about 10 m from our line. Then she smiled at me. Actually smiled, and you know what she music said? What? Hey, ugly. Does your insurance cover acts of human? Vex shuddered at music, the memory. Then she pressed a detonator. Turns out, while we were surrounding them, they were mining the entire area beneath our position with improvised explosives made from fertilizer and fuel. The building came down. My entire platoon went with it. She and her team escaped through the sewers while we were digging ourselves out. In the whole time, we could hear them laughing through the tunnel system. Laughing, yes, laughing. Humans laugh when they are happy. They laugh music when they are nervous. They laugh when they are terrified, and they especially laugh when they are about to do something monumentally stupid that might actually work. Vex coughed, purple blood flecking his mouth. That laughter haunted my nightmares for cycles. It is not a sound. Prey species make Krell. It is the sound of an apex predator that just realized it has you right where it wants. You, music, Krell's mandibles clicked. Nervously, I could tell you 100 stories like this. And GT, music. And GT. There was David Okonkwo who held off an entire battalion for 6 hours using nothing but a damaged mech suit, and what he kept calling his big mouth and music bigger attitude. There was Marie Fontaine who hacked our communication network using a laptop computer that was older than some of my junior officers. She flooded our channels with Earth music, terrible, loud, aggressive music, with lyrics about not backing down and fighting for your right to music. Party, whatever that means. And GT, how did you counter these tactics? And GT, we could not, Music Vex said simply. Every time we adapted to one strategy. They invented 3 new ones, music. Every time we thought we understood their limitations, they did something that should have been physically impossible. There was a human medic, music, named James Park, who carried 3 wounded soldiers out of a firefight while he himself had been shot. Twice Krell, he should have been unconscious, he should have been dead. Instead, he was running and screaming something about how death could wait. Because music, he had patience to save. But humans are fragile. And GT, you said so yourself. And GT, they are fragile, Vex agreed. But fragile and breakable are 2 different music things. You can break a human body easily enough, breaking their spirit, though, breaking their music. Will, that requires you to kill every last one of them, and even then I am not entirely sure music it would work. Because I suspect they would find a way to be spiteful as ghosts. A massive explosion music lit up the sky to the east. Human artillery, no doubt. That was when I started music, too. Understand, Vex whispered, we were not fighting a species, we were fighting an ideology with a pulse, the Battle of New Singapore, Music Vex said, and his voice cracked on the name. That is where everything changed, music, where I changed. Krell noticed the commanders' hands were trembling now, though whether from blood loss or memory he could not tell. We had pushed deep into their territory, 16 months into the campaign, and we were getting desperate. High Commander Zarn wanted a decisive victory, something to show the Council that we were still in control, so we targeted a civilian evacuation center. Strategic value was minimal, music, but the psychological impact would be enormous. Break their morale, make them understand resistance was futile. Vex's eyes closed. I objected formally. Music on record. I told Zarn this was a mistake. What did he say? He said I was going soft, said maybe I had been fighting humans too long. Music started thinking like them, so I shut up and followed orders like a good soldier. The bitterness in Vex's voice. Could music have stripped paint? We sent in 3 full battalions, 4,000 soldiers against maybe 500 human defenders and 10,000 civilians. Children, Krell, elderly, sick, the ones who could not fight. The wind had died down now. The battlefield felt oppressively quiet. The music, human forces knew they could not win. No possible scenario where they came out alive. We had air superiority. We had armor. We had numbers. They had concrete barriers and small arms. The math was simple. Vex coughed violently. But here's what I learned that day. Humans Music do not do math the same way we do when you threaten their families. When you threaten their children, the equation changes music completely. They fought harder. Harder does not even begin to cover it. Vex's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They fought like demons, like every single one of them. Music had made peace with death and decided to take as many of us with them as possible. A woman named Angela Torres held point for 40 minutes with a machine gun and GT, music and GT. When she ran out of ammunition, she used the gun as a club. When the gun broke, she used music, her bare hands. We found her body later surrounded by 17 of my soldiers. Krell said nothing. There was an old man, had to be 70 cycles by human reckoning, who charged our position in a ground vehicle loaded with explosives. He was singing, actually singing some music, old earth song, about not going gentle into some good night. Took out 2 of our troop carriers. Music. Vex's breathing was ragged now, but the one that broke me, the one that made me finally understand, was the school teacher. Music. Yeah, guy named Thomas Webb. He was not military, not a soldier. He taught human children about mathematics, music, and literature. When the battle started, he was helping evacuate kids to the shelters, but one of our gunships spotted the evacuation convoy, started strafing them. Vex's voice went hollow. Webb put himself between the gunship and a transport full of children, just stood there in the open, firing a pistol at an armored aircraft. Completely useless, completely suicidal. The Dieter could have killed him in half a second. What happened? The pilot hesitated just for a moment, and in that moment, Vex's fellow defenders destroyed the gunship with a rocket launcher. Vex died anyway, caught shrapnel from the explosion. Music. But those kids got away. Vex opened his eyes and they were wet. I watched the whole thing through tactical feeds, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. And GT. What? Music. And GT. We were not winning. We could never. Because every human we killed defending their families. Music made 10 more fight harder. Every child we threatened created another generation that would never ever forgive us. We were not music conquering Earth. We were creating an entire species of enemies who would hunt us to the end of the galaxy if necessary. So you retreated. Music. I ordered a full withdrawal from that sector, sent a priority message to the fleet. This is not a war we can music win through attrition. This is not a war we can win at all. And GT. Vex grimaced. And GT. Zorn had me arrested for cowardice, stripped of rank. And GT. Music. And GT. Sent to a penal battalion. But you are a commander now. And GT. Yeah. And GT. Well, Vex tried to smile. Turns out I was right, and Zorn figured that music out too late to matter. After my court martial got quietly overturned because surprise. And GT. Music. And GT. I was not actually wrong. They assigned me to intelligence. Vex shifted, slightly grimacing. My job was to music study captured human media and try to understand what made them tick. Figure out a psychological weakness we could exploit. And GT. And did you find one? And GT. I found dozens and somehow none at all. Vex made that wheezing laugh again. Humans are terrified of everything. Krell, spiders, heights, public. Speaking the dark, being alone, not. Being alone, germs, each other. They have phobias for things that do not even exist, but then when faced with actual extinction-level threats, music, they make jokes about it. Krill's confusion must have shown because Vex continued. Music, I watched hundreds of hours of human entertainment, movies they call them shows, and GT, music, and GT music videos, and you know what I noticed? Half of their stories are about themselves getting wiped out by music. Aliens, robots, zombies, asteroids, climate disasters, you name it, they are obsessed with their own extinction. But in every single music story, some small group of humans figures out how to survive through sheer stubborn determination and friendship speeches. Friendship speeches, yeah, they actually stop in the middle of fighting to give motivational talks about believing in each other and never giving up. Should be a tactical disadvantage, music. Instead, it somehow makes them fight better. Vex coughed. Their music was worse. We tried using psychological warfare, broadcasting demoralizing sounds. They countered by blasting something called heavy metal music at our positions. I am talking guitars and screaming and drums that sound like artillery fire. Our troops needed therapy afterward. Despite himself, Krill found his mandibles twitching with something like amusement. But the strangest thing, the music thing that absolutely broke our intelligence models, was what happened with prisoners. Vex's voice grew quieter. We expected torture, execution, standard treatment of enemy combatants, and GT, music, and GT. Instead, the humans who captured our soldiers gave them medical care, food, shelter. One of our pilots got shot down over their music territory, broken leg, severe burns. He was certain he would be killed. Instead, a human family hid him in their house for 3 weeks. Music while he healed. Why would they do that? Because, and I quote from the after-action report, music. It was the right thing to do. Vex shook his head slowly. The family had lost their own son. Music to our bombing runs 2 months earlier. They had every reason to hate my pilot, music. Instead, they fed him soup and showed him pictures of their dead child and explained that they did not want anyone else to music lose family members. When he was strong enough to travel, they helped him reach a neutral zone for prisoner exchange. That makes no tactical sense. Music, nothing about humans makes tactical sense. They are walking contradictions. Vex's breathing was getting shallower. They will kill you without hesitation to protect someone they love. Then they will cry about music it afterward and build memorials to honor both their own dead and yours. They write poetry about the tragedy of war while simultaneously inventing more efficient ways to weigh it. They are the only species I know that domesticated carnivorous pack hunters as pets and then dress them in little sweater. What dogs do not ask. It will just confuse you more. Music. Vex closed his eyes. I spent 2 cycles trying to write a comprehensive psychological profile of humanity. My conclusion, music, was 3 words. Dangerously emotional chaos. The council rejected it as insufficient. I told them that was the most accurate assessment possible, and anything more detailed would be lies. This morning, and GT, music, and GT, Vex said, and the word felt strained. because time had become slippery around the edges. High commanders ordered one last push, one final glorious battle to break the human defensive line and prove that Kryn's superiority still meant something. You knew it would fail, Krill said. Not a question, of course I knew. Everyone with half a brain cluster knew. But Zarn was desperate, the council was. Breathing down his neck, 3 cycles of war. And GT, music. And GT, billions spent, thousands dead, and we controlled less territory than when we started. Vex's laugh turned into a wet cough. So yes, music, I knew it would fail, and I went anyway. Why? Because soldiers like me do not get to music choose when to stop fighting, we just get to choose how we fight. Vex's eyes focused on something far away. I led my battalion into the teeth of their defenses. We made it music, maybe 2 km before their artillery found us, then their air support, then their ground music forces, who apparently had been waiting for us because humans love a good ambush. The purple blood pool had stopped spreading. And GT, music. And GT, that was either very good or very bad. And Vex suspected he knew which. I took shrapnel in 3 places, lost my weapon, got separated from my unit, ended up in hand-to-hand combat with a human soldier in the rubble of what used music to be some kind of human religious building. Vex touched his chest where the worst wound was. And GT, music. And GT, big guy covered in scars, had these cold eyes that had seen too much death. He had me dead. Music to rights, gun pointed at my head. I was on my knees, bleeding out, but he did not shoot. No. He looked at me for a long moment, then he said, music, you are that commander. Vex guy, right? The one who pulled your troops out of New Singapore? Vex's voice cracked. I said yes, and he lowered his music weapon, said my niece was in one of those evacuation convoys. Then he just walked away, left me there. Krell's mandibles hung open. I tried to get up, tried to find cover. Made it maybe 20 m before the building collapsed, caught me. And GT, music. And GT, debris everywhere, communication equipment smashed, and here I have been. For what, 3 hours? 4, Vex shrugged. Which was a mistake, long enough to think, long enough to realize that human soldiers showed me more mercy than my own commanders ever did. He should have killed you. Yeah, probably. Vex smiled. Music, an expression that looked wrong on Krell features, but that is the thing about humans, music, kid. They absolutely will kill you. They are terrifyingly good at it. And GT, music. And GT, but they also have this capacity for mercy that defies all logic. They will spare an enemy who showed them kindness once, even in the middle of a war zone, even when that enemy belongs to a species trying to exterminate them. Another explosion, closer this time. That human soldier is probably still out. They're fighting, still trying to protect his people. And GT, music. And GT, and tomorrow, if our forces meet again, he will probably try to kill me all over again. If I had survived this, that is what makes them so dangerous. Vex's breathing was ragged now. They can separate music, the individual, from the collective. They can hate the war but spare the warrior. And GT, music. And GT, we never learned how to do that, so let me tell you, Crow, before my organs Finish shutting down what humans really are. Vex's voice gained strength from some final reserve, music, because when you get back to whatever is left of our command structure, they are going to ask you what happened here, and you need to tell them the truth, even if they do not want to hear it. Crow leaned closer, his auditory sensors straining to catch every music word. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest. And GT, music. And GT, they are not the fastest or the most technologically advanced. On paper, they should not even be a minor inconvenience. Music. Vex coughed, his whole body shaking. But they have something that none of us, not the Kryn, not the Zelthorians, not the Querks, not any music of the 73 species in the Galactic Council, truly understand. What is that music? Hope. Vex said it like a curse and a prayer at the same time. Absolute, illogical music. Reality-defying hope. They genuinely believe that things can get better, that they can make things better, even when all evidence points to the contrary. Even when defeat is mathematically certain, they look at the universe and say, no, we are music going to keep trying anyway. Crow remained silent. Processing. We Kryn, we calculate odds. We assess risk. Music. When something becomes impossible, we accept it and move on. Efficient. Logical. Music. Reasonable. Vex's eyes dimmed slightly. Humans see impossible and treat it like a personal challenge. They have a saying, I read it in one of their historical music documents. When you're going through hell, keep going, not retreat, not surrender, keep going through hell itself. Music, if necessary, but surely desperation alone cannot. It is not desperation. Music. That is what I am trying to tell you. Vex interrupted with surprising force. Desperation. Music is what you feel when you have no options left. Hope is what you feel when you decide. Music. That having no options just means you have to create new ones. Humans do not fight because they have no choice. They fight because they refuse to accept that choice has been taken from them. The sky above was darkening, though whether from smoke or approaching night. And GT, music. And GT, Krell could not tell. Every species has a breaking point. Krell, a moment where the losses have become too great. Music, where survival instinct overrides everything else. We have models for this. Equations. When casualties exceed 37%, morale collapse. When resource depletion reaches critical thresholds, population surrender. Music is basic social physics. Vex made that wet rattling sound again, except humans do not follow the models. We have bombed their cities to rubble. And GT, music. And GT, and they rebuild. We have killed millions of them, and the survivors fight harder. We have destroyed their infrastructure, and they adapt. They should have broken 10 times over by now. Then why have they not? Because breaking would require music, them to give up hope, and humans, bless their stubborn, irrational hearts, do not know how to do that. Vex's voice dropped to barely music above a whisper. They tell stories to their children about heroes who overcome impossible odds. They sing songs about rising from ashes. And GT, music. And GT, they make movies about small groups of rebels defeating massive empires. They program themselves from birth. Music, to believe that persistence eventually wins, that good eventually triumphs. Music that one person can make a difference, but those are just stories. Are they? Vex fixed Krell with an intense stare. Because from where I am, lying bleeding out on their planet after 3 cycles of getting our tails, music handed to us, those stories seem to be working pretty well. We came here expecting to conquer primitive. Instead, we gave them a common enemy, a shared purpose, and a reason: music to chew it. We literally made their inspirational stories come true. Krell's mandibles clicked nervously, music as the implications sank in, and here is the terrifying part, the part that should make the entire Galactic Council lose sleep at night. Vex's breathing was becoming labored. This is not even humanity at its peak. This is humanity under attack. And GT, music. And GT, weakened, bleeding, desperate. Now ask yourself what happens when they recover, when they reverse engineer all our technology, music that they have been collecting from every battle, when they take their capacity for hope and innovation and spite and music, aim it outward at the stars. You think they will retaliate? I think they will do what humans always do when someone threatens them. They will make music. Absolutely certain it never happens again. Vex closed his eyes. The galaxy spent 10,000 cycles developing slowly, carefully following the rules. Humans are going to rewrite those rules in a generation, maybe 2, and they will do it with that same maddening optimism that let them stare down our invasion fleet and make jokes about it. Another rumble of artillery. And GT, music. And GT, the sound of human defenses holding firm. So here is what you tell the Council. Krell, tell them that we did not lose to human weapons or human tactics. We lost to music, human spirit, to their fundamental bone deep refusal to quit. Tell them that continuing this war will not break humanity. It will forge them into something stronger, and tell them that the smartest thing we music can do right now is sue for peace and hope. Desperately hope that humans are as forgiving as they are fierce. Krell sat in silence for a long moment, watching the light fade from Commander Vex's eyes. The older soldier's breathing had become shallow, each intake of air a visible struggle. And GT, music. And GT, around them the sounds of battle continued. Humanity's war machine grinding forward with relentless determination. Commander Krell said quietly, what should I do? Vex's mouth curved into something, music that might have been a smile. What should you do? Kid, you should survive. Get back to the extraction point. And GT, music. And GT, tell them everything I told you, and then if you are smart you will request reassignment to anywhere that is not Earth. And if they do not listen, if the Council, music, orders us to continue fighting, then you will learn the same lessons I did, except you will probably music die in the process. Vex coughed, purple blood bubbling at his lips. Council is run by politicians who have never set foot on a battlefield. Music. They see numbers on reports, not bodies. On the ground, they think one more push, one more offensive, one more brilliant strategy will turn things around. They do not understand that we already lost this war the moment we started it. Krell's for music, eyes blinked in sequence, processing everything he had heard. I do not want to die for someone else's pride. Good, that is the first sign of intelligence I have heard from You, Vex's voice was fading now, each word and effort. Humans have a saying about that too. Discretion is the better music. Part of valor means sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when you are beaten and walk away. The council music will call that cowardice. The council can call it whatever they want from the safety of their climate-controlled music chambers light years away. Vex's breathing hitched. I have been called a coward before. Music still lost fewer soldiers than the so-called heroes who kept throwing bodies music at problems that required brains to solve. A human patrol moved through the rubble in the distance, their voices carrying on the wind. They were singing something because of course they were. Humans sang when they were happy, when they were sad, when they were marching into battle, when they were pulling their dead from the wreckage. Always sing it, Krell. Vex said, his voice barely a whisper now. Promise me something, sir. When this is over. And GT, music. And GT, when we finally surrender or retreat or whatever face-saving excuse the council comes up with. Do not hate them. Humans, I mean. Vex's eyes were glassy, now unfocused. They are just protecting their home, their family. If our positions were reversed, we would do the same thing. Well, no, we would probably surrender after running the calculations, but you understand what I mean. I understand, Commander. And music, maybe, if you survive long enough. If peace actually happens, try to learn from them, not their tactics or their technology. Learn how they music. Hope, how they keep going when everything says they should stop. Vex's breathing became more ragged. We could use some of that stubborn optimism in our culture. Might make us less efficient but more alive, you know. Krell found music, himself nodding, even though he was not entirely sure he did know. One more thing, Vex said, his voice now barely audible. Tell my clutchmates I am sorry. Music, I did not make it home. Tell them I died doing something worthwhile, even if that something was just finally music. Understanding the enemy, his eyes closed, and tell them that humanity is not the enemy. Our own arrogance was. The music. Commander's breathing stopped just like that. Commander Vex was gone, another casualty in a war that should never have been fought. Krell sat there for a moment longer, listening to the distant sounds of human voices, human machines, human determination, reshaping the battlefield. Then he stood, and GT, music, and GT, carefully memorizing the location so retrieval teams could find the commander's body, and began making his way back toward green lines. He had a story to tell, a warning to deliver, truth that the Galactic Council desperately needed to hear, whether they wanted to or not. Behind him, music. The human patrol singing grew louder. Something about standing tall and never backing down, something about fighting until the very end, something very, very music human. Krell found himself hoping, with an emotion he did not quite understand, that when he delivered his report, someone would actually listen. And GT, music. And GT, that maybe, just maybe, Commander Vex's final lesson would not be wasted. Because if there was one thing he had music learned today, it was this. Underestimating humanity was not just a mistake, it was a death sentence, and the Kreen had already paid that price. Far too many times. The war would end. Eventually, all wars did, but Krell suspected that humanity's impact on the galaxy was just beginning, and somehow, despite everything, that thought did not fill him with dread. It filled him with something else entirely, something suspiciously like hope.